Hey everyone, I have been showing you guys a lot about my travels on the outside through Denver and Austin, and today I thought I would show you guys a little bit more of my life on the inside, which is what I do when I'm not working and traveling around, and give you a tour of my sketchbook or my sketch journal. So this is the one I have to replace this one since I finished it, and so I thought I'd go through this one, show you guys some of the tools I've been working with and kind of the process I had as I was filling out this sketchbook. So to start, when I first bought this sketchbook, I decided it was going to be only for flowers, and I have never done a sketchbook that has one focus before, so this was most of the time pretty easy, but at other times a little bit of a challenge. So talking about this piece, I actually started with these watercolor markers. So when I first got this sketchbook, I actually just was like trying to get paper to try out these watercolor markers, and I've not seen a lot of videos on watercolor markers. I basically was using this sketchbook to learn how to use watercolor markers on my own. So I'll give some reviews on these, but first I want to talk about this piece. So this piece was done with these 9 colors, and it's pretty cool because, as you're able to see here, I was able to get some like purples and different kinds of pinks, but there aren't actually any purples in my palette. So sometimes I was a little frustrated. It felt like I had to learn how to mix, and learning how to mix with watercolor markers is a little different because I'd oftentimes have to mix the watercolors on a plate, and these are the paint brushes I would use. So these brushes have water in them as well, and then I could kind of dilute some of the paint, but for the most part these paints are pretty pigmented, so these types of brushes were good for that. But when you put them out on like a palette or something, it's kind of funny because I've been using a candle topper for my mixing palette. I don't usually mix too often, so like I'd put the water on here and I could mix decently, but learning how to just mix the medium by itself was a little challenging at first, but I was able to get this range of colors using this set to begin with. So just to give you guys an idea, I was working with this set as well as my Arteza set, which I don't have next to me, but it was much fainter in color, you'll see going through. So this is my second piece. I was working on Skillshare when I was making these, so I was following along with that type of a reference. So this teacher looks like she focused a lot on vases, and the colors were challenging. You can see I was trying to try different techniques, trying to get the traditional watercolor feel with these like kind of different pens, and I was able to achieve some of it. And then I also used some, like, I have a white pen here. Here we go. And oh, I also used some pen work on the last two. So I often would use my brush tips or my colored microns to get some of the detail work in some of these sketches. This one was probably a Pinterest inspiration. One thing that I've been working on in my studies is working with a limited color palette. I tend to use, when I can, as many colors as possible, as you can see in my last two, but this one I tried to stick with about 5. And again, all of these were done using these Faber Castell watercolor markers. Okay, This one was from a watercolor painting book that I have. I was using it as inspiration. Personally, I don't feel like I captured it super well, but it was still nice to just like keep in the practice. I was doing one every week, and so each one of these was created 1 week after each other. That's just the time that I have right now to paint and dedicate to this learning process. This one was more fun for me because I liked to be able to incorporate a portrait, which is a little bit more familiar for me, into my watercolor practice. But I actually am gonna get up and show you guys the watercolor pens that I use. I'm gonna step away from here for a second so I can grab this. So I have this gigantic box of Arteza watercolor brushes that I bought so that I can get some colors here that I felt like I could not get using these 9 colors. So I bought the biggest pack that they had, and I definitely did not feel without any colors for a little while. Now, my review for the Arteza brushes is that if you are trying to mix anything, it's very challenging because these are not half as pigmented as my Faber Castells, and so it can make it a little challenging to get a color that you want. And also the paper plays a big part in how the colors mix together, as I learned later when I started to go into my new sketchbook. Okay, this one was kind of a fun one, as well as trying to come up with like fun content. I thought, how else can I use floral illustrations? You know, what are some different ways that you can apply this content to different different ideas? So this was more like a scientific approach. It was kind of fun to make it cute but still also scientific. Sometimes you just gotta play around. I think this one was done with, like, again, 5 different colors. You can see my micron pen work in there. This was another Skillshare video from Anna Victoria. This one was a lot of fun because I got to use a lot of the colors from my Arteza set, and as well as using the white pen. You can also use some Copic ink, which I don't have with me at the moment, but I've used a lot of that. Something I haven't mentioned is sometimes I use these metallic markers in my work. Let's see if I can find one. Alright, well, if it's not here, it definitely shows up later in my work, so you'll see it. But I really loved being able to get like these different yellows and greens by just picking up one pen and not having to mix, versus like trying to have to mix a watercolor pen. Okay, so I decided after painting a couple pieces I should probably start to practice using the pens because there were just certain techniques, as I'm explaining, I couldn't really achieve without practice. So I started practicing, okay, how do these mix together? What colors do I need to pick, and what colors look good together? So on the side here, I started naming the pens that are on the box here because there's so many. Sometimes I would forget what colors look good together, so I started cataloging what colors I would use in this particular project. I wish I could say I continued to do that, but I didn't. But it was really helpful for this study. This one is a fun painting because I was on a trip to Lake Arrowhead when I painted it, so I painted it under the stars and basically with zero light. The light from my porch, from my Lake Arrowhead Airbnb. So this one also, the reference came from my watercolor painting book. And I used a combination of the Faber Castells and the Artezas because at that point I already realized I liked having the pigmented colors of these brushes with the Artezas, with the variety of color of the Artezas. Okay, I did quite a few pieces from Anna Victoria's Skillshare class. This was one of them, called Loose Watercolor Florals. I used entirely Artezas, and then you can start to see I used like a metallic type of pen on the flowers here. Actually, you can see it a little bit here too. I used a white metallic pen on the roses. So this was from, to be honest, I actually don't remember, but you can get these on Amazon, metallic color pens. Pretty affordable. I continued the series. So this was the same series. I liked that concept a lot, so I just repeated that concept the next week with different colors. And then, you know, sometimes you try things in your sketchbook, you decide if you like it or not. I did not end up liking this choice, but I got to try it out. So this is again using the metallic brushes, the metallic pens, along with the Arteza watercolor pens. And then this was another set of flowers. These were supposed to be different flowers. You can see these are a little different than the ones I was painting before. They require a little bit of a different technique to achieve. Same thing, Arteza pens, Arteza brushes with the metallic pens. This one was a little bit more simple, so you can't see because I don't have the paper with me, but I actually did a whole separate paper of just painting leaves for practice before I painted this in. I don't love the choice of the size of the circles in this frame, but I think overall it's pretty cute. Here's another practice paper. So this was more of the yellow and green leaves. I did a whole other paper that was more of a blue, purple feel to the leaves. I can't show you what this is in reference to because this is my iPhone and that's what I'm filming this video with, but this is basically the cover of the back of my iPhone, and I was using it for inspiration to see if I could recreate it. So I'll have to insert a photo into the video here. I don't actually know if I'm gonna edit this video, so maybe I'll just put it in the blog post. Okay, so this was actually just a swatch test. Please excuse my sloppy swatches, but again, occasionally I will, after painting a couple pieces like this, where I consider this like, it's still a sketch, but it's not painting practice. So I decided to do a painting practice day because I still wasn't getting the pigments and the values that I wanted out of my paints. So I just quickly went through, not quickly, but took some time with some different colors and tried to practice getting more values with just one color. Same thing with this one here. And this is also in Anna Victoria's Skillshare class. So thanks to her for helping inspire a lot of these practice sessions. I really love how this one came out. It's not very often I feel like I was getting like the watercolor look that I really wanted from either my Faber Castells or my Artezas. So to be able to achieve this effect with, I believe these were my Arteza brushes, was really awesome. This was another technique practice study from Anna Victoria. I highly recommend checking out the entire class. I did her beginner's class all the way through to the florals. I went in backwards order. I wouldn't have done that on purpose. I just didn't realize she had it in that order before I did it backwards. So I highly recommend this was her Pulse and Precision class, as well as her, I don't remember actually the name of it, sorry, but great practice. You know, sometimes as an artist, you just have no words. Like, I don't know what I was thinking this day. Maybe I was just tired and wanted to practice painting at all. So I was like, I'm gonna keep up my study. I think my goal with this was how much value can I get from one color in one flower? Like, how much value can I show? I think that's what I was thinking when I painted this one. This one was definitely a play on color. This was in reference to a picture that I took at the Denver Botanical Gardens, and I can't say it came out exactly how I imagined, but definitely it was a fun experiment to like play with colors that aren't, these were like actually pretty close to the colors of the leaves in the photo, but not exactly. I think they were like a little bit more red, but it was still really fun to play with sort of like the metallics with my this one was mostly Artezas. Actually, I think this one was mostly Arteza pens and my metallic pens. It was really fun to play around with that. This is not a flower tutorial, but this is also by Anna Victoria, so that's how this one made it in here. You'll have to check out her class on Skillshare. This one was a copy from my watercolor painting book. It's a really interesting book to read. I'll link to it in my blog post. At least it's fun to look at. I just loved the stark lines on the like bright colors. So I wanted to like recreate this effect. Now, this being said, I've heard you shouldn't copy other artists' art, but sometimes I just like to kind of think like, put myself in their brain. In this instance, I felt like it was a little challenging, but it was still fun to try. This one's an interesting piece because I actually started out with the background, just the background, and I was learning how to, I guess, make a galaxy texture, also from Anna Victoria's class on Skillshare, but it didn't have a flower element, so I like just went back in with like a Sharpie and just made all these roses, and it came out kind of interesting, but a little bit like psychedelic. This one you may have seen on my Instagram. I was working with Pinterest again. This one I actually drew out before painting. I didn't do that for all of them. A lot of them are actually pretty loose paintings. Another one from Anna Victoria's class, very fun. This one was all Arteza pens, so I do want to say that I was really excited with this one because I felt like I got more pigment from my pens. It didn't feel like I had all of the textures I wanted from a traditional watercolor, but still very exciting to see what I could do. I think I took this picture somewhere, but I forgot where. Okay, oh, I know what it was. I learned that I liked a new type of flower. That's what, it was a very exciting day. I was like, these flowers are so beautiful. I'll have to find the name. Okay, again, just really loving the amount of color and like textures I could get from my Arteza pens, applying what I was learning in Anna Victoria's class to different paintings, and I love the white space in this one. This was like the time of Christmas painting, so I was thinking of poinsettias when I made this, but it was like a cute pink color, and I love that color. Again, I'm using the metallic pens with my Artezas, and this doesn't have a brand. It's not a brand, it's just paint brushes, water paint brushes. Looks like this one has a bookmark. I think this is actually the end. It is the end. So this one was super fun, also very challenging. It started out pretty good. I'm pretty patient with myself when I start a painting, and I started at the top here. I wish I could say I didn't get lazy as I went through. I did paint half of this one day and half of it the next day, just to try to like not lose my spark of inspiration and dedication to making this the best piece ever, even though it's just a sketch. but to just not practice a lazy habit. So I did do this over 2 days because I painted these petals like one by one, and I used like 3 colors on every petal. It was probably maybe too many colors, but it was a lot of fun, and it came out very cute. This one was just watercolor pens, just the Artezas. No microns, and I did sketch it out first with one of my, let me find it. Prismacolors. Cool erase. This one is in red, but I sometimes also use blue. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to go through my inner world. I'm coming to you guys from San Antonio, Texas this afternoon, and really appreciating that you guys took some time to go through my sketchbook with me, my inner world, my outer world, and I can't wait to see you guys soon.